I just realized that those pencils are not identical to each other. I don't know, I've been using them for months and not realized that sometimes I like the marks I make and sometimes I don't. And the reason is the hardness of the lead. Oh, I can't believe it. Hi watercolor lovers, my name is Angela Fehr and I've been painting in watercolor. It's been my medium of choice since I was 18 years old. And what I've learned in almost 30 years of painting is that you can grow a lot of techniques and develop a lot of skills in 30 years. But even more important than skill is bringing your passion, your love, and your heart into your painting process and really giving yourself permission to pursue all inspiration, no matter how crazy. And I think that can be really challenging when we often find ourselves wanting to make really, really good art, and we don't always think about how we define that. And because of that, I think of World Watercolor Month as a time to really embrace the idea of passion and love for this wonderful medium. We're celebrating watercolor in World Watercolor Month, and there's all kinds of ways that you can do that. And it should be and is completely open to you. Pour your heart and your love into your watercolor practice and see how your art comes alive when you let that happen. I'm going to be doing a painting in 40 minutes or less, something that you can do in an afternoon and maybe more than once, just playing with this beautiful medium and the World Watercolor Month prompt of rusty. That's the word for the day, and I'm gonna see how far I can take it. So, oh, totally forgot. Stick this on. And if you have not visited the World Watercolor Month shop yet, and gotten your own little World Watercolor Month button. And there's not just buttons in the World Watercolor Month store. You can bring home a World Watercolor Month coffee mug or a World Watercolor Month pouch. This is my pouch. The painting on this pouch is mine. And there's a bunch of other artists who have submitted art and created their own limited edition pouches. These are amazing for storing art supplies, plein air. I have a Go kit in last year's World Watercolor Month pouch that is full of my painting supplies so that when I want to go out and paint, they're all right here and ready to go. And all of the merchandise in the World Watercolor Month shop is there for charity. The proceeds from the shop go 100% to the International Child Art Foundation. And what better cause during World Watercolor Month than to put art supplies in the hands of kids and really empower them to be expressing themselves creatively. I have a beautiful, terrifying, fresh piece of watercolor paper. I'm gonna just get started. Today's prompt is rusty and it sure feels accurate. I've been actually really actively painting lately, and yet somehow when I went to try to paint something for today's prompt, oh boy, did I feel like nothing was coming. Did I feel like maybe I'd been knocked out in the rain and all my joints had seized up? I don't know. And so here I am with a blank piece of paper and not really an idea of how to work in my theme of rusty. I have a lovely rusty color from in my palette that I want to work with. I'm working with Rockwell colors today, and this is the hue Magic Wizard, and I'm looking forward to using it today, and yet somehow I've just been making big ugly messes and I'm just not sure what to do. So we need something to kickstart this prompt of rusty. I'm working with rusty colors. I want a rusty color theme. That's as open-ended as I can make it. Since I am trying to be open-ended, but I'm also feeling kind of stuck, I love going to a sketchbook for some ideas and just seeing what the sketchbook contains. And it's a shame-free zone. Sketchbooks get to be where you make your ugly messes. And I have a few, this might be a place to start. I have a few little compositional sketches that I could maybe let inspire the shapes and patterns on my page. Here's a couple more. This one's kind of a foliage or floral kind of shape, which would actually work well for the idea of rusty. Something like this, a pattern of light and dark to play with. Maybe that would be the place to go. And you know, sketchbooks are not, you don't just have to use a sketchbook, but past paintings can be a source of inspiration as well. And so, you know, that's where you maybe created something you liked. There's another landscape style sketch. So if you've created something you like, you can then use it again, just get more mileage out of it. And I have a stack of little sketches like this all around the studio that I can work from as well. I'm seeing some out of the corner of my eye. These kind of give a floral vibe. This one is landscape-esque. Here's some that are just some different, very, very simple verticals, landscapes. I like this kind of idea, working with some dark shapes and then bringing that towards, it looks like the shoreline, which I think it actually is. There's some more studies in light and dark that can also prompt an exploration into light, shadow, contrast. Actually, I'm really liking this one. My paper is not square, but I wonder if I could use that. I am going to work with the landscape orientation. So I'm turning the paper. I'm using a square sketch, this one right here. Basically, to me, it looks like trees, landscape in behind. I actually think this was inspired by the view from the end of my driveway, looking out towards town and over the rolling hills of northern British Columbia. So that's something that could loosely inspire a painting. I also like the idea of working abstractly and not being too tied to the idea that these have to be trees and this has to be distant hills and this has to be maybe a road. Just letting some of those shapes and patterns guide the painting. So I'm working right now just sketching on the watercolor paper. This is 100% cotton cold press, and so you can see that the marks that I'm making with this Neocolor crayon, it's a water-soluble crayon, and so the marks I'm making are kind of bumpy. They are touching the top of the page, the surface, but not sinking down into the tooth of the paper. And so I'm getting kind of very much a crayon line. Yeah, crayon line. So let's add some water. Being that the Neocolor is water soluble, sometimes you have to scrub at it a little bit. I'm not worried about that right now. We're just going to bring a little bit of fluidity in, and you can kind of see some of it starting to dissolve as the water sits on the surface. But I don't want to cover the whole page with fluid right now. So we're just going to put a little bit. And now we're going to start working with the Magic Wizard color, sitting here all lovely and rusty in my palette. And let's just touch it with a light touch on the, and a really open shape. Let the brush kind of determine the shape that goes on the paper. This is just a fascinating brush. It's a Lebenson paintbrush, handmade. I'm using ethically sourced materials. Tracy Lebenson makes each of these brushes handmade to order, and that means if you have arthritis, for example, and you need a thicker grip for your brush, he's able to do that, custom make that for you, which I think is really wonderful. And I love a big brush, but I love a brush with a lot of capacity for paint. And so this brush holds a lot of paint. And it has this beautiful fine point. And then the other thing I love about it is once it starts to get a little bit drier, you can see those hairs start to split, and I can create some really gorgeous lines, comb-like marks, with the tip of the point of the brush as it kind of splits across. So that's really, really, really beautiful. And I've just brought in a second color. This color is called Morai Witch, and it's also made by Rockwell. And it comes on as a kind of pinky violet. So we're gonna start with the pinky violet and the Magic Wizard. We've got a rust and a violet, which pair really nicely together. And we're gonna invite some fluidity and just play with those underlying shapes that we saw in the original design sketch. the beginning of a painting, and this is going to be a 40-minute painting. I'm not spending any more time on it than that, maybe less. And prompt myself to keep it simple. We're going to invite the paint to move at this stage though. Most of the time, the first strokes are going to be open-ended enough that you can move into them, create something new, build on top of those shapes and develop them as the painting kind of suggests what it needs. And I think for me that's the key to intuitive painting, is really starting with a lot of openness. There's no feeling of obligation to make the painting fit a theme or an idea. Even if I start with a prompt, like a sketch that reminds me of a landscape, let the painting also kind of tell you what it wants to become. And at this stage, I'm looking at colors. I'm thinking about the way these colors play together. And it's very interesting because the Magic Wizard and the Moray Witch both are Rockwell's self-evolving colors. And so I want you to pay attention to the way the colors have changed since I first placed them on the paper. I'm going to put a dark patch of the Moray Witch color here. When I first purchased these colors, they were part of a set called the Magic Set from Rockwell. And I've been working with Rockwell for several years now, recommending their colors, using their colors, and recommending them because of the beautiful things these self-evolving colors do when you add water and let them move across the page. So I'm placing that beautiful, rich kind of red, pink, violet, and then we're going to let it kind of flow a little bit. And interestingly, this particular color has a black tourmaline in it. It's got a black sediment that you'll see swimming up from the wash. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Really want to bring in a bit of a turquoise. I love turquoise in my paintings. This is the light turquoise, also from Rockwell. And when I glance at my reference sketch, I feel like a nice little block of turquoise up here would be really nice to use. And I'm working with now a synthetic brush, and I want you to notice that it's making a wider mark. The point is round rather than kind of dagger-like pointy. And so I'm getting a different shaped mark, but I'm also be able to, I work more firmly with this brush, press harder. And let's bring that turquoise down into here now. I talked about those early strokes being open-ended, but some of them had crispness to them as well. And it's very easy in watercolor, I think, to feel like we want to keep everything we place. All those brush strokes that I've placed on the page, I want to stay untouched, and I'm afraid to mess with them. And so this process of building on top of that original, those original first brush strokes, it's a process of letting go of some of those early decisions as well. And so I just want to point that out. The Magic Wizard just seems to be getting more vibrant as I look at it. It's really quite beautiful. And the Moray Witch, the tourmaline's coming out here. I feel like I could probably maybe bring it in with a little more intensity. Should we do something that looks maybe a little bit more like leaves? Maybe one here. And see, I don't like that mark as much as some of the other marks I made with this other brush. So let's dive in, pick up a rich saturation of pigment, and see what kind of shapes this brush will make. And let's put a hint of that witch color into the wizard color. Got wizards and witches, and we're making magic here today. And let's pull down, bring that line right down the page. Why not? I'm going to step back and look at it at this stage, and I'm also noticing my sketch. There's kind of some little lines here that I'd like to play with. And my temptation is to use this brush, but I'm not going to. Let's just start with bizarre choice of fingers. It's not something watercolorists usually do. And then why not just push in with some more of that turquoise and just block in some shapes. It's bringing in a different shape, something that's not already on the page. I'm going to now bring it into some other parts of the page and just kind of weave with this brush because it likes to split and make some kind of comb-like marks, which I also think are really interesting. So if I just use that for this section of the painting, it could be interesting. And then maybe and everything I'm choosing right now is prompted by the what ifs, not knowing what to do, having, and I don't even know if I could call it having an instinct, but there's choices have to be made. And so not overthinking my choices, picking up a tool, making a mark, trusting my ability to take that mark and do something interesting with it. This is a wide lead sketching pencil. It's General's brand, and it's just, this one's a 4B pencil. I have another one that's 2A, and it just occurred to me, or 2B. 4B I like better. Look at how nice and dark those marks are. I just realized that those pencils are not identical to each other. I don't know, I've been using them for months and not realized that sometimes I like the marks I make and sometimes I don't. And the reason is the hardness of the lead. Oh, I can't believe it. Just flaked on that knowledge. I want to just take a moment and talk about the paints I'm using in my painting today. A few years ago, I discovered the Rockwell watercolors. People were asking me if I had tried Rockwell's watercolors. And truthfully, I was a little hesitant to dive in because I have a lot of paint. And really, one brand isn't one brand a lot like another. And then I saw the Magic set from Rockwell. This is a set of 12 watercolor paints, and you can see each of these colors is not just a single color. There's texture, there's separation that causes these colors to be extremely unique. And when I ordered this Rockwell Magic set, I really fell in love. I fell in love with almost every color in this set. I've gone through these tubes and emptied them out long ago. And recently I've been able to curate my own watercolor sets from Rockwell, and that's these 4 sets here. I have the, let's just flip them over. I have the Visible Peace set, Whimsical Grove, Midnight Flower, and Autumn Reverie. And each of these colors, I'm not doing a very good job here, and each of these sets contains a tube from the Magic set. I've paired Magic Wizard with a beautiful, clean, deep aqua, dark cyan, and a red. I've paired Moray Witch with a light turquoise and a gold ochre. This is almost a triad and absolutely a gorgeous combination. I've paired my favorite green, Onat Diamond Yellow, with a beautiful violet and a burnt sienna. And the lapis brown has been paired with rose red and sea blue black. Each of these sets offers a way to try the Rockwell Magic colors for yourself, see how those self-evolving colors play on your paper, and have a little fun with watercolor. You can find these on Rockwell's website. And when you place an order over $60, don't forget to use the coupon code Angela01 to get a 10% discount. I'm a big fan of Rockwell. They're always coming out with beautiful new colors. And they also have my artist sketchbook, which you saw earlier, a really lovely large sketchbook, hardcover, that I use for my visual note-taking, for resources for intuitive paintings, and you can find that on the Rockwell website as well. One thing I think is kind of fun, and it kind of feels like a little game I've been playing with myself, is at this stage of the painting, when I've got a lot of paint down on the page, to come in with the pencil and start kind of outlining things, drawing over top of my painting. And when I was a new painter, I would I would think I needed a pencil drawing at the beginning of the painting to tell me where to put all my shapes. And so to come in now, this stage of the painting, and to delineate shape feels a little bit subversive. It's not who I thought I was going to be. I used to paint for a very long time. I painted in kind of a paint by number, do a good drawing and then fill in the blanks. But this is so much more fun. Very childlike and very free. I made a horizon line. We're going to work with that. I'm going to follow the Moray Witch over here just with my pencil as well. And so now I've got a lot of line in the painting, and I think that's kind of fun. And what else can I do? What else could make this fun? And I've been working less than 20 minutes now. It's probably about a 15-minute painting. So that means, you know, I could stop. I could say, well, this feels like we've got beautiful color flowing. We've got the Magic Wizard's yellow here. It's red here. It's deep and rich over here. Sometimes that Magic Wizard color will have an undertone of a little bit of blue. So there's a lot that actually starts to happen when we let these colors kind of flow on the page. And I have this little silicone stylus. Never ever used it in a watercolor painting before, so why not today? And I mentioned that Rusty not only was a color descriptor today for me, but it also was how I felt when I tried earlier today to do some variations, something for this prompt. And so it's just kind of exciting to me and interesting that I can come in with some stuff I've never done before and find some playful joy in that. Let's just scrub a little bit with the brush. Why not? So that's the Moray Witch making some pattern on the page. Glancing at my sketch, I think I'm going to create, bring in a little bit of white gouache. This is, oh, I didn't clean my brush very well. This is new for me. To work with gouache is something I haven't done a ton in the past. And so I can feel like this is also something I'm going to lack confidence in, but it's also an opportunity to be excited by new things, to maybe learn how to do something new, use a new color or a new material product, and use it and maybe learn to use it in my way. And I think as artists that can be very freeing. I'm not taking a course on how to use white gouache. I'm just, every now and then I pick it up and I look for, you know, is it sparking some kind of creative impulse inside of me that I can maybe follow and let maybe guide me to something new. Right now the white gouache is being used to kind of carve out shapes, so I can paint it over top of what I've already painted and see some of the things beside those areas, the white areas, pop forward. Not sure that I'm feeling it, loving it. The other thing I feel like is when I've used gouache in the past, it really kind of stands out. It gets a little bit pasty over top of the transparent watercolor. And so the way around that, so it doesn't just look like you glued a bunch of flat white shapes over your painting, is to layer. So once that gouache is on the page and starting to settle in and dry a bit, maybe then we come back with some of our other colors. I can spatter a little bit and bring some of that turquoise over top of the white. And that's going to send the white into the second layer or into the middle layer. I can outline around the white. And I like the turquoise because it also is a little bit gouache, like it's a little bit opaque. And actually that just made me excited. So let's use the turquoise. Fairly dry, and when I'm using the paint a little bit drier, a little bit inky or chalky on my brush, I like a stiffer brush so I can really kind of get a lot of paint without, and press my brush into it without having a lot of moisture on the brush that's going to have it running all over the place. Spatter, line, but I don't get quite the same fascinating lines as I do with the Levinson brush. So let's try it. I can see my brush is a little wetter. I'm going to just keep massaging it and adding pigment to that moisture so that I have less moisture and more paint. Maybe that will work. And I feel like with a brush like this, I have the opportunity then to kind of scribble with it, which is also very freeing. But line and spatter over top, it all does the job of sending that white gouache just a little bit backwards. And I could probably do the same, bringing my crayon back into the painting as well, or my pencil. And I think when people talk about intuitive painting, I think they have a feeling that those of us who are doing it, we have some kind of certainty or knowledge or a really strong sense of intuition. I don't have a strong sense of intuition. I have all kinds of questions, but I have maybe a feeling like there's nothing to lose. The sense that I'm going to try some things. My outcomes are always unknown in painting. And, you know, all of us, those outcomes are unknown. We make a decision, we make another decision, we see what happens. And we don't get to know if a different decision would have been better. Sometimes we feel like we made the wrong decision. And man, if I could do it again, I would backtrack, I would start over, I would do something else. But we don't know. It might have, you know, that other something else might have been better, but it might not have. It might have just created a different set of problems. And so I think that's one thing that kind of guides my intuitive painting, is just recognizing that it's all a gamble. And painting like this just, it's a lot of fun. It gives me, it builds skills, and I love that. I love the fact that being able to work from that first choice and then make another choice and then make another choice and then see how all those choices come together to create a painting, that has created in me an ability actually to problem solve in a more controlled painting. I love the warm glow of this yellow right here, and that's from the Magic Wizard. I'm going to see if I can maybe create some over here. We're going to put a brighter saturation of that particular wizard color on the paper. So yeah, in a more controlled painting, sometimes you do things that change what you thought the painting was going to look like. And all of this intuitive painting gives you some tools to kind of regroup and be able to adapt. And adaptability, I think, is one of the greatest skills a watercolor artist can bring to her painting practice. This is my busy era for paintings. I often feel like the colors and choices and shapes that I'm bringing into my paintings at this stage right now, where I'm at, tend to make my paintings look kind of like there's a lot going on. And I kind of thought that maybe bringing in that white gouache would calm things down a little bit, but I can't resist bringing in more shapes over top of that. And that's okay. You know, I love the fact that, oops, I just broke my lead. I love the fact that working with this kind of busy, shape-driven, line-driven process right now. I like what it's doing for me as an artist. And one thing it's doing for me is it's pushing me to not think so much about limitations. I used to think, oh, my painting's too busy. What if there's no such thing as too this or too that? What if everything you're doing right now is just teaching you something that's going to make your masterpieces a few years down the road? And so pushing through boundaries, lines because I like them, pushing past things, doing things that you think maybe are wrong, or too much or too little, not enough. These are things that are going to inform your work later on. And so that gets to be, rather than being critical of it, I did that poorly, I did too much or too little. Here's where we get the yellow back, is we just add some water, let that wash down. So feeling like you did too much or too little, instead of saying that word too, you recognize that you're teaching yourself boundaries. The things that you are comfortable with. If you stay in your comfort zone, it's not healthy for your art practice. First of all, debating adding that same flow of the yellow over here too. Lifting off after that wash of Magic Wizard comes down gives me this lovely warm yellow. So I just love the idea and the ability to recognize that when I say something's too busy, I mean that I'm pushing outside of my boundary of what I think is appropriate. How many shapes I think should be active in my painting. And maybe it is too busy. Maybe there is a lot going on and it's disorienting for whoever's viewing my work. See how I lift that out and you just get that yellow there? Lots of warmth now coming in. And now we're just going to use some a white acrylic ink pen to put a little spatter on. Let's squeeze out a little bit first. It likes to be squeezed. Loosen up that ink. Get it flowing. And my laptop's never going to be the same again. It's just directly in front of me recording video and getting rained on with white paint. But I guess I look at the marks that I said were too raw a few years ago, and I'm deliberately and defiantly and joyfully putting them in my paintings now. So what does that say about the things that I think are inappropriate or too much or not enough for my paintings this year? I might just be defiantly embracing them next year. And if that's the case, then I don't need to worry about whether I'm doing too much of a good thing or too much of a bad thing. This is just part of the journey. And if it doesn't all come together seamlessly for this painting now, that means it's creating something actually really gorgeous and powerful inside of me as an artist. It means the artist is being formed rather than the painting. Oh, I gotta write that down. So if this doesn't turn out to be a masterpiece, maybe what I'm doing instead is creating an artist rather than a painting. And maybe in the long run, that's certainly a much more powerful and long-lasting impact on my work. I've been reading a biography of Van Gogh, and Vincent van Gogh's fascinating, sad, fascinating, heartbreaking story. But I'm really intrigued by the way he studied. He would get obsessed with particular artists, and he would be absolutely defiantly rejecting of other artists. And then, a few years down the road, those artists he rejected might just become his favorites. And he really devoted a lot of time to studying the artists he thought had voices to lend to his work or could influence him. And he got to choose, and those influences, his style changed dramatically over those first years of his painting, And that was part of the process. Experimenting, trying on different styles, seeing what worked for him and what didn't. Not always knowing who, and he would, kind of defiantly make choices. This is what my art's going to be. And then he would change his, and he didn't listen to anybody. And then he would change and do what everybody had been advising him to do all along. And I just think it's really interesting. But he didn't get along with people very well, but he shaped and sculpted his own journey. And, maybe he didn't listen to people, and maybe he was slow to take their advice on what his art should do or be. And maybe sometimes they were right and he was wrong, but it was his journey. He had to learn some of that in his own time. Just really enjoying these little pressed marks with the white pen. So we're just going to keep doing them and kind of fill in some shapes that way. Did I mention I liked making busy paintings in this era of my journey? We are coming up on 30 minutes or just over 30 minutes. So maybe what I'm demonstrating today, or theme of rusty, and there's definitely some rusts coming out. Love this combination of colors. There's a reason they're in my sets from Rockwell. And I think I'm going to stop here. Liking what I have. I'm starting to lose the light of day. It's getting kind of dark out. And so I know my painting is going to get really shadowed if I'm not careful. If you're painting along with World Watercolor Month, and if you've painted along with today's prompt of rusty, I'd love to see what you're working on. Post your work on social media using the hashtag World Watercolor Month and share it with the world. You can also hashtag me, Angela Fehr. I'd love to see what you've created.